The day I lost my job, I didn't cry. That's what surprised me the most. I had always imagined that if something like this happened, I would break down in the office bathroom, mascara running, hands shaking, calling my mother for comfort. But when my manager asked me to step into the conference room for a quick chat, something inside me already knew. And instead of panic, there was only a strange, heavy stillness. The room felt too bright, too clean. He didn't look at me right away. He shuffled papers, cleared his throat, spoke in phrases that sounded rehearsed. Budget restructuring, difficult decision, and nothing personal, 3 years of staying late, 3 years of saying yes when others said no. 3 years of defending the company at family dinners when my sister said corporate jobs were heartless. And just like that, I was reduced to a line on a spreadsheet. I nodded politely. I even thanked him for the opportunity. That was who I was, gentle, agreeable, understanding. The girl who believed that loyalty created loyalty. I packed my desk slowly. No one made eye contact. The office felt quieter than usual, like everyone already knew. Or maybe they just didn't want to be next. When I stepped outside, the air felt different, too sharp, too real. I called my sister first. They laid me off. I said, trying to keep my voice light. There was a pause on the other end. "Oh," she said, not shocked, not angry for me, just calculating. "Well, maybe it's a sign. You were too comfortable there anyway. Too comfortable." I laughed softly. I told myself she meant well. She always said she wanted me to aim higher, but something in her tone felt distant, almost prepared. That evening, I sat at our small kitchen table, the same apartment we shared to save money together. I stared at my laptop screen, updating my resume while she talked excitedly about a business idea she and her fiancé had been discussing. "You know," she said casually, "maybe this is the universe pushing you towards something bigger. We've actually been thinking of expanding. If you want, you could help us out for a while." Help them out. I knew what that meant. Long hours, little pay, family support. I smiled gently. Let me think about it. Later that night, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her whispering in the living room. Her voice was low but urgent. "No, she doesn't know yet it happened today, yes. It makes things easier." Easier? I lay still, staring at the ceiling, my heart suddenly awake. What made things easier, the next morning she was overly kind. She made breakfast, asked if I needed anything, suggested we could rearrange expenses, since I wasn't working. I told myself I was imagining the shift. That losing a job makes you sensitive, suspicious, emotional, but small things began to stand out. The landlord had stopped emailing me directly about rent reminders, even though my name was still on the lease. My sister began handling all financial discussions. And then, 3 days later, I found an unopened envelope on the hallway shelf. It had my name on it, official letterhead from work. She had placed a magazine on top of it. I picked it up slowly. It was my severance confirmation, standard package, nothing unusual, except for one line that made my stomach tighten. Final pay. Processed per joint account instructions. Joint account. I didn't have a joint account with the company. But I did share a household account with my sister, the one we used for rent and bills. I sat down slowly on the edge of my bed. Had I signed something, missed something, trusted too easily? I remembered how, months ago, she insisted we simplify finances. She handled the paperwork because she said I was too busy. I had signed without reading carefully because I trusted her, because she was my sister. That afternoon I asked casually, "Hey, did you see any deposit from my severance?" She didn't hesitate. "No, maybe it's delayed." Her eyes didn't flicker, her voice didn't shake, and that hurt more than anything. Not the job loss, not the uncertainty, but the possibility that the person I defended my whole life might be quietly rearranging my fall into her opportunity. That night, my phone rang at 11:47 p.m. It was my old manager. I stared at the screen, confused. Why would he call me now? I answered softly, "Hello." His voice was lower than usual, careful. "Listen." He said, "I probably shouldn't be doing this, but you need to check your email, the personal one, and don't tell anyone yet." My heartbeat slowed instead of racing. There was that stillness again, the kind that comes right before truth arrives. I whispered, "Okay." After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a full minute. Then I opened my laptop and clicked on my inbox. My hands didn't shake when I opened my inbox. That scared me more than if they had. There it was, a new message marked confidential, sent from my old manager's personal email address, not the company one. Subject line, "You deserve to know." For a moment, I just stared at it. My reflection looked back at me from the dark screen, pale, tired, older than I remembered. I clicked. The first attachment was a forwarded internal memo. My eyes skimmed it quickly at first. Restructuring, performance review adjustments, department reduction. The same words he had used in the conference room, but then I slowed down. My name was listed, not under termination due to budget cuts. Under position elimination, pre-approved internal transfer. Internal transfer, I scrolled further. Another attachment, an email thread between senior management. One line caught my breath. "If we proceed with this adjustment, her role can be absorbed under the new family partnership arrangement." Family partnership arrangement. That phrase felt heavy, familiar. My sister and her fiancé had registered a small consulting business 2 months ago. She had mentioned it casually as if it were a side project, just something we're exploring, she'd said. My eyes moved down the screen. Her sister's fiancé has already met with the board informally. They're aligned. The room felt smaller. Aligned, I kept reading. The final line from my manager read, "She doesn't know." I assumed she was aware. When I realized she wasn't, I felt she deserved transparency. I closed my eyes. This wasn't a layoff. It was a replacement, and not by a stranger. By someone sitting in the living room 10 feet away from me every night. I didn't cry, not yet. Instead, memories began rearranging themselves quietly in my mind. The sudden interest my sister had taken in my company's structure. The way her fiancé had asked questions about leadership gaps during dinner. The time she insisted I introduce them to my manager at the company holiday event. "She's so talented," my sister had said proudly that night. "You'd love her ideas." I had thought she was supporting me. Now I wondered if she was studying the layout of the house before stepping inside. I read the email again. Slowly, my manager hadn't explicitly accused anyone. He had just provided documentation, facts calm. Clean, undeniable. I minimized the screen when I heard footsteps in the hallway. My sister knocked gently before opening my door. "You're still awake?" she asked, smiling softly. "You should rest. Tomorrow we can talk about next steps." Next steps. I looked at her face, the same face I grew up with, the one that held my hand on the first day of school. The one that told me secrets under blankets with a flashlight between us. And suddenly, I saw something else. Not cruelty, not hatred, just ambition, fear, self-preservation. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm okay," I said. And strangely, I meant it, because something inside me had shifted. The confusion was gone. In its place was clarity. After she left, I opened the attachments one more time. There was a final document I hadn't noticed before, a projected partnership agreement. Her fiancé's name listed under strategic consultant, effective date, the same week I was laid off, my position's responsibilities redistributed, my salary reallocated under consulting fees, neat, strategic, legal. I leaned back against the wall and let the silence settle. It wasn't just about money, it was about secrecy. If she had told me, if she had said, "We see an opportunity and it may affect you," maybe the pain would be different. But instead, she let me thank my manager. She let me pack my desk. She let me come home humiliated. And she offered me a temporary job out of pity. That was the part that hurt, the dishonesty wrapped in concern. At 1:12 a.m., another message came through from my manager. I don't expect a reply. I just thought you should have the full picture. There may be more changes coming. More changes. I closed the laptop carefully. For the first time since losing my job, I allowed myself to feel it fully. The betrayal wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet, calculated, and deeply personal. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. The apartment felt different now, like I was standing in someone else's plan. I glanced at the shared folder pinned on our fridge, future goals. She had written expansion. Stability, growth. I used to think those words included me. Now I understood something simple. I had been part of the bridge, not the destination. I returned to my room and sat on the edge of my bed. I could confront her right now. I could wake her up and place the printed emails on the table, but I didn't. Because in that moment, I realized something important. If someone is willing to hide the truth once, they will deny it twice. No, I needed to understand everything first, so I did something I had never done before. I stayed silent. Not out of weakness, but out of observation. And for the first time in my life, I chose not to react immediately. I chose to watch, and that was the night I stopped being naive. Silence is louder than anger. That's what I learned in the days that followed. I didn't confront my sister. I didn't accuse her. I didn't even change my tone. I still asked if she wanted tea. I still nodded when she talked about future plans. I still listened when her fiancé visited and spoke about strategic growth. But something inside me had become very still. I started observing the way she avoided mentioning my old company, the way her fiancé suddenly had meetings near downtown, the same area as my former office, the way she reassured me too often, "You'll land somewhere even better," she would say, almost rehearsed. This is just temporary. Temporary. One afternoon while she was showering, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. I wasn't trying to snoop. I truly wasn't. But the screen lit up with a preview notification, her fiancé's name. Board approved the next phase. Timing worked out perfectly. Timing worked out perfectly. I didn't need to unlock the phone. I didn't need to dig deeper. I already knew. That evening, we sat across from each other at dinner. The air felt heavier than usual. I spoke to the landlord today. She said casually, "Since you're not working, maybe it's easier if I handle the rent entirely for now. Less pressure on you." I looked at her. That was generous on the surface, but the lease had my name on it too. If she handled everything, I would slowly disappear from the paperwork, from the decisions, from control. That's kind, I said softly, but I'd prefer to stay involved. Her smile tightened for a fraction of a second. "Of course," she replied quickly. "I just want to help. I realized then that betrayal doesn't always come with cruelty. Sometimes it comes dressed as protection." Over the next week, I started reviewing documents quietly. Bank statements, lease agreements, old emails. The severance deposit had indeed gone into our shared account, the one she primarily managed. The amount was lower than expected. Processing fees, she would say if I asked, but I didn't ask. Instead, I calculated. I printed copies of everything and kept them in a folder inside my closet. I updated my resume again, not with desperation this time, but with focus. For the first time, I wasn't trying to prove myself to anyone. I was protecting myself. One night, as we were cleaning up after dinner, she sighed dramatically. "It's stressful carrying everything alone," she said. The business is expanding faster than we thought. There's a lot of responsibility. I dried a plate carefully. I imagine there is. I said. She hesitated. We're officially partnering with your old company next quarter. There it was. Out loud, I didn't react. I didn't let my hand freeze midair. That's great, I said gently. She studied my face, searching for something, jealousy, maybe. Bitterness, but all she found was calm, because in that moment I understood something deeply. She hadn't believed I was strong enough to handle the truth. She thought I would collapse. She thought I would beg, and maybe she was right about who I used to be. But she didn't know who I was becoming. A few days later, I received a quiet phone call from a former colleague. Not dramatic, not urgent, just curious, "Are you okay?" she asked carefully. "There were rumors I thought you left voluntarily. That's what they told us. Left voluntarily." I felt something settle into place. That was the narrative. I had chosen to leave, not been replaced. Not strategically removed, I thanked her and ended the call. That night I sat alone in my room and finally let the tears come. Not because I lost a job, not because of money, but because of the realization that someone I loved had rewritten my story without telling me. And still, I didn't confront her, because anger would only confirm what she believed about me, that I was emotional, fragile, reactive. Instead, I did something quieter. I opened a new bank account. I contacted the HR department directly and requested full documentation of my termination terms. I scheduled an appointment with a legal advisor not to fight, but to understand, and slowly, very slowly, I began making plans to move out. Not dramatically, not in secret, just steadily. One morning, as we drank coffee in silence, she finally asked, "You've been distant. Are you upset with me?" I looked at her. For a second, I almost told her everything, but then I saw it. She wasn't asking to confess. She was asking to measure how much I knew. "I'm not upset," I said calmly. "I'm just thinking." "About what?" "About boundaries, about trust, about how love without honesty slowly becomes manipulation." She nodded, relieved, and in that relief, I saw something else. Fear, because she could feel the distance now. The version of me who would explain, overshare, and seek reassurance was gone. In her place was someone quieter, someone who understood that strength doesn't always raise its voice. Sometimes it simply prepares to walk away. And that's when I realized silence isn't weakness. Silence is clarity waiting for the right moment. And my moment was coming. The morning I decided to leave, nothing dramatic happened. No shouting, no slammed doors. No accusations thrown across the kitchen table. Just sunlight filtering through the curtains and a quiet certainty in my chest. I had spent weeks gathering information, organizing documents, and preparing myself emotionally. The legal advisor had confirmed what I already suspected. What they did wasn't illegal. It was strategic, cold but strategic. My severance had been processed according to the paperwork I had signed months ago. Paperwork I trusted my sister to simplify. For me. Trust is expensive when it's misplaced, but I no longer felt angry. Anger had softened into understanding. And understanding had turned into boundaries. I found a small studio apartment across town. Nothing fancy. Just enough space for a bed, a desk, and my own thoughts. I paid the deposit from the money I had quietly transferred into my new account. The rest I budgeted carefully. For the first time in years, every financial decision was mine alone. That evening, I asked her to sit with me. She looked nervous. "Is everything okay?" she asked quickly. "Yes," I said, and I meant it. I folded my hands on the table and spoke slowly, calmly. "I'm moving out next week." The silence that followed was thick. "What? Why?" Her voice cracked slightly. "We're family. We're building something together. Building." I held her gaze gently. I think we're building different things. She blinked. Is this about the job? Because I told you that wasn't. I know. I interrupted softly. And I did know. I knew she would never admit it fully, not because she was evil, but because admitting it would require her to face herself. So I chose something stronger than confrontation. I received some information after I left the company. I said evenly, I understand how the partnership happened. Her face went pale. For a moment, she looked like the little girl who used to hide broken glass behind her back and swear she didn't touch it. You don't understand, she whispered. I do. I said, you were protecting your future. Tears filled her eyes. It wasn't supposed to hurt you. And that was the truth. She hadn't wanted to hurt me. She just hadn't wanted to risk losing an opportunity. And in that calculation, I had become acceptable collateral. I'm not angry. I told her honestly, but I can't live somewhere I don't feel fully respected. She opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again, because there was nothing dramatic to fight against. No screaming, no insults, just a boundary. Over the next week, I packed my things quietly. She offered to help. I declined gently. The night before I left, she knocked on my door. I'm sorry, she said. It wasn't a detailed apology. It didn't include full confession, but it was real enough. I know. I replied, and I did. People don't always betray you out of cruelty. Sometimes they betray you out of fear, out of ambition, out of insecurity. But understanding someone's reasons doesn't mean accepting their behavior. The day I moved into my studio, I felt lighter than I had in months, not because I had won. There was no victory parade, no dramatic downfall for her business. In fact, their partnership with my old company continued to grow. But something else happened. A former colleague recommended me for a position at a different firm, one that valued transparency and collaboration. During the interview, they asked why I left my previous job. I paused. I could have told the story of betrayal, the manipulation, the secrecy. Instead, I said, it was time for me to grow somewhere that aligned with my values. And that was enough. I got the job. It paid slightly less than my previous role, but it felt different, healthy, clear. Months later, my sister and I met for coffee. There was still distance between us, but not hostility. She looked at me carefully. You've changed, she said. I've grown. I replied gently, because that's what pain can do when you don't let it harden you. It can refine you. Losing my job hurt. Discovering the truth hurt more, but the quiet choice not to fight, not to humiliate, not to expose, that gave me something no promotion ever could. Self-respect. I learned that strength is not about proving people wrong. It's about knowing your worth without needing their agreement. It's about walking away calmly when staying would cost your dignity. And sometimes the most powerful sentence you can say is the one you choose not to. I didn't destroy her reputation. I didn't demand revenge. I simply removed myself from the place where trust had been quietly traded for ambition. And in that quiet departure, I found peace, real peace, the kind that doesn't need applause, just integrity.